Minecraft 1.19 has added ancient cities, now one of the largest generated structures, but also being one of the most dangerous, so here's how to find and raid them. So ancient cities only generate in one biome, and that is the Deep Dark. And the Deep Dark only spawns in one place, and that is in areas of low erosion. So that basically translates to the Deep Dark is always underneath mountain biomes. And so because of that, generally among the largest peaks and between the mountains, you will find ancient cities. So for instance right here, if we go down this cave and basically keep going lower while staying directly underneath the mountain biomes, we'll see right down here that the normal terrain turns into Skulk, and then from there if we go even lower down, we will find ourselves an ancient city. And this ancient city is incredibly low down. If we dig down here, you'll see we'll get to Bedrock very quickly, just over here. And so basically, when an ancient city generates, it'll only ever generate at one Y level, and that is Y negative 52. Now, of course, that is the lowest part of this area, is Y negative 52. But because of that, from this area and upwards is the ancient city, and you'll never have one of these lower down or higher up in terms of Y level. Now if you are in the Deep Dark biome, especially under a large group of mountains, you will find many ancient cities. You'll notice this ancient city generated right next to this one over here. You see each ancient city only has one of these central areas that sort of looks like a portal. And you'll see this one here is right over next to that one there, with no real barrier in between. And I've actually found ones where there's up to 4 ancient cities that just generate in one massive area. And so if you're underneath a mountain biome, basically 100% chance you'll run into one of these. So it's as easy as mining down to negative 51, negative 52, something like that, and just going forward until you find one of these underneath the mountain biome. So what actually generates in the ancient cities? There's always one central structure, and they always look something like this. Now this does sort of look like a portal, but it also looks like the Warden's head a little bit with these sort of ear-like shapes on the sides and a big open mouth, so it's hard to say if Mojang will actually ever turn this into a portal or just keep this as sort of a massive monument to the Warden. Underneath this massive structure, if we just go underneath it, which we can actually open up with the skulk sensors here, there are some secret redstone doors. If we go down under here, you'll notice there is a redstone room. And I actually really like this because something that Minecraft lacks a little bit of is showing players how to play the game without just having to look up everything. And of course, I always like providing tutorials for everyone. But it's also nice to see that Minecraft is showing the players in the game how to do some different redstone functionalities. So for instance, this right here is like an AND gate. There's some different logic gates in here and redstone functionalities. Over here, for instance, we learn about how the target block can power the piston, and this redstone block will power this lantern here. And over here we can see how the lectern will power a redstone lamp as well. There's also some other things we learn over here, for instance that power cannot go through glass, but it can go through solid blocks. And there are several different types of these that can spawn, some with more interesting redstone configurations, some with less interesting. And these are always directly underneath the portal there. Now if these don't end up opening up for you, you can always just break basically anything here, and this will just lead you right down into the redstone room if we go like this. And there's always this interesting soul fire that generates at 3 blocks deep underneath the portal here, so it definitely does signify there's something special here eventually, but certainly nothing we'll see in 1.19. Now around that are these sort of barricades with the wool blocks here. If you walk on wool blocks, it makes the wardens not get after you, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But overall, we can see the entire ancient city has the look of an abandoned structure, sort of like a giant fortress. What I actually really like about this is the fact that certain parts of this generation remind me of pillager outposts and woodland mansions. For instance, this here basically looks identical to the top part of a pillager outpost, just smaller. And also if we look around here a bit, we may find a wool room, and in this wool storage room, they store the exact types of wool that are stored by the Vindicators in the woodland mansion. And so I believe this is meant to lead the player to believe that this structure was built by the pillagers and then later abandoned by them. And throughout it we can find different things like ruined treasure rooms with some good treasure inside. There is the icebox room, which is right over here, and this actually has a unique loot chest. If we go in here, you'll see we can go right in here and see there's all kinds of ice down here and also some loot down in there. Very interesting room here overall, and it also is kind of doing that redstone teaching thing, as well as having some note blocks here where you go into there. Overall, I'm not sure exactly what Mojang's idea was with this, but certainly the Deep Dark seems to be a place to learn redstone functionalities at, but unfortunately it's not quite as peaceful as that, as also throughout the ancient cities we have the Skulk Shrieker spawn in. Now there's no hostile mobs that can generate in the ancient cities or the Deep Dark biome, except for the Warden, And of course, if the Skulk Shrieker is triggered 3 times in a row, we will get the Warden, so you want to be very careful with that. And that's basically what makes this structure super dangerous, is the fact of the Wardens being here. Now, what exact treasure is actually in the ancient cities? Well, if we open up some of the chests here, there's 2 different types of ancient city loot. There's the first type, which is basically a generalized mix of a bunch of different item types. This can have a lot of variation of what you actually get. So for instance, here there are soul torches, a lead, a candle, some coal, some skulk, and some amethyst shard. Just be aware when opening these that wardens can generate in sometimes. To look at another couple chests here, you can see this one here as the other side music discs, some skulk catalysts, a potion of regeneration, bones, skulk sensors, and this disc fragment. And basically the disc fragment here is a special item you get in these chests. If we look in here, we might see another special item. So there is the other side music disc there. There's also the Swift Sneak books here. And just be careful here, because of course this is not the way to loot this. Now we'll go into looting it in a second here, because this warden would kill you if you were not in creative. And so we can basically get ourselves some enchanted diamond leggings as well, and basically any enchanted book, but specifically you can also get the Swift Sneak books. In fact, this is the only place to get the Swift Sneak enchantment. Now you can see in this chest right here there's more discs fragments. You can also see there's diamond horse armor, glow berries, bottles of enchanting, name tags, and overall a really good variety of items. But all those come from the exact same loot configuration, and this can also have these skulk catalysts in it. And if you see right here, it can have echo shards as well as enchanted diamond hose. And I like how these items are really relating to the deep dark. For instance, the hoe helps you mine the skulk the fastest, and the leggings of course are for the Swift Sneak enchantment. Now basically what the echo shards and the disc fragments are for, which you only find in the ancient cities by the way, are for 2 really interesting new items in Minecraft 1.19. So if you put 9 disc fragments in the crafting table like this, you will get a brand new music disc. This is the only new music disc of the update, but definitely an awesome one, and if we play it, it basically is very similar to the 11 music disc, and I won't play all of that because it's not incredibly melodic, but there's some interesting story and lore behind that, and if you listen to it, it definitely has a story behind it, much like the 11 disc. Now what are the echo shards for? Well, the echo shards can be used to make a brand new item. You see, if we surround a compass in echo shards, and actually not like this, but we'll surround it all around like this, we get a recovery compass. I like how they made the texture very different from the music disc here, because these actually look slightly similar. And basically what the recovery compass does is it'll point you into the direction of where you died last. Now of course I haven't died yet on here, but when I do die, they will show me the direction that is. And of course the use of this, especially in the ancient city, is that you'll probably die a lot, and so this will point to where you die. Although unfortunately this item is completely useless in hardcore mode. Still a very cool texture and something super important, because sometimes it's hard to find where your items are. Overall a bit of a niche item, but definitely something nice to craft. And that's also the only use of the echo shards, although they may add more uses to those in the future. And so those are generally the types of things that you get in the ancient city loot chests. Now there's one other type of chest you find here, which is the icebox chest. And that generates in the icebox structure. There's one right over here. We'll go down into it. And if we basically go down here, you'll notice there's always a chest under here, and in it is a special loot table as well, including things like packed ice, baked potatoes, golden carrots, and suspicious stew. This is sort of meant to be like a little room to refill on supplies. I have no idea why they're storing ice here. It'll probably come out later in some new update or some new lore of why there's ice hidden down here, or maybe it'll always be a secret, sort of like the secret of why pillagers are having wool being stored here, as well as at the Woodland Mansion. So that is the loot that you find at the ancient city. So now that you know about the ancient city and how it generates, how do you actually loot this structure without spawning in the warden and getting instantly killed? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So what do you need to bring to raid the ancient cities? Well, it's all right here. You want to bring some projectiles, you could use arrows, but I would generally suggest eggs, as when it spawns in a chicken that can distract the warden. Also, you want some potions of instant health, some swiftness potions if you can get them. You can either do speed 2 or speed 1, whatever you like. I would definitely suggest some milk buckets, some shulker boxes, an ender chest, a bed to set your spawn point, elytra and fireworks to get away from the warden quickly, also a fortune hoe and a pickaxe. This can actually be silk touch as well. In fact, silk touch is probably better because you can pick up the items with that. And the pickaxe and the hoe will enable you to break through some of these ancient city blocks safely. You want a bow with power 5 on it, as well as some spectral arrows if you can. Of course, if you're in Bedrock, some standard arrows. And last but not least, you want some potions of night vision. Now of course with the potions of night vision, when you drink it you can actually see the entire ancient city. As it's so incredibly dark, it's definitely important to bring that with you. And overall I would suggest getting as many of these items as possible, and I would definitely suggest setting your spawn point here and to never raid the ancient city before you have elytra, because they'll definitely enable you to get away from the Warden very quickly, which is vital when trying to not be killed by it. So the most important thing when raiding the ancient city is to go very slowly, and to also not upset any of the shriekers or the skulk sensors. Because the only real way of doing this is to crouch the entire time, I would potentially suggest going to options, going to controls, and changing your sneak to toggle. Then you can just toggle the sneak key, and even jumping up blocks here, you can stay crouching here, which is incredibly useful if you're raiding the ancient city, as it enables you to be safe without having to touch that shift key anymore. You just go kind of slowly. The idea behind this is you want to get all the treasure without getting killed by the shriekers. Now in certain scenarios like this, with a whole bunch of shriekers and things around it, you're basically going to have a very hard time raiding this. Something I forgot you want to have as well is a bunch of wool blocks. Now you can always just mine these out of the ancient city, but having this is vital to raiding it effectively. So in an area like this, how would you actually get that treasure safely? Well, basically just block up the skulk sensors here, because placing and breaking wool blocks does not count as a sound that the skulk shriekers pick up on. You can just surround them in the wool blocks here, because wool blocks absorb the sounds that the skulk shriekers hear, so you can make yourself safer from that. And they kind of protect whatever angle that they're facing. So for instance, if we wanted to get loot from this chest here, something we could actually do is we could surround it in some wool like this, even just put wool basically all around the chest, so that there's just a layer of wool, whatever area could have sound escape from, if you kind of think of it like that. Then if we go in here and grab that treasure, it actually should not alert any of these skulk shriekers. So then if we look in here and grab that treasure, you'll notice it didn't alert any of these skulk shriekers there, because the wool here is blocking the angle from the sensors. Now of course skulk shriekers themselves do not have the powers to see items outside of just stepping on them, but these skulk sensors do. And so you want to be careful about the skulk sensors more than the shriekers, as these skulk sensors are the most dangerous. And interestingly enough, what you can actually do if you're sure that no sensors will pick up on it, is you can surround these shriekers, break these shriekers with, let's say, your hoe, as it's the quickest. And of course right there we broke a block underneath it, so now we're going to have our warning level go up one. So you want to be incredibly careful to not do that very much, as the warning level takes 10 minutes to go down by one. If it gets to level 3, then you will have a warden spawn in, which is incredibly dangerous. Now again here, we'll just surround this in wool from every angle that we think could potentially have sound come out of it. Like for instance, something like this will probably be fine. We can open this up here, but you saw here it actually did alert that one down there. Thankfully there's no shriekers within range, but you want to be really careful about that. You can never do it perfectly. That can always be a good technique to grab the items out of here. Now something you do want to do is break as many of these skulk shriekers as possible without alerting any of the sensors, because once these skulk shriekers are gone in an ancient city, then the ancient city is completely a peaceful mode area. But if you saw right there, I actually stepped on the shrieker. It'll also make it alert a warden. You see the warden approached one more time there. So the third time one of these things is alerted, then a warden will probably spawn in, which is incredibly dangerous and what we want to avoid. Now the point of the shulker boxes here are so that you can grab your items from the chest that you've looted and safely store them away without any issues. Now let's say we've grabbed some loot right there. We want to get to a safe-ish area. We'll just go to an area where we do not see any of the shriekers anywhere nearby. So for instance, this area looks completely fine. Of course it might not be, but we'll find out right now. It was completely fine, yep. And we can just put all of our items in here that we do not want to get lost. So we'll put, let's say, our coal in here and these different items. Then we'll grab out the ender chest, place it right there, and this is why you want the silk touch pickaxe. We'll put the shulker box in there, break the ender chest, and then those items are completely safe, even if we're killed by the warden. As if you want to completely raid an entire ancient city, it is very likely that you'll get killed by the warden multiple times. Now to make crouching around this entire ancient city be a little bit quicker, you can always drink a speed potion, but something that'll help even more than a speed potion is a swift sneak pair of leggings, which you can occasionally find in the ancient cities here. And what you can also find is you can find a book of swift sneak, and you can put that on any pair of leggings that you want. Also, if you are eating, any sound like eating a carrot that could alert the shriekers will not be sent if you are crouching down. Now, certain of these structures are really easy to raid, and that's one of the reasons why you want to bring these wool blocks, is so that you can pile up without any real danger of dying unless you just fall off the structure like I just did there. You'll notice I didn't say you need to bring any armor for this, and you basically don't, because there's no real direct attacks you get other than that of the Warden, and most of the Warden's attacks do not count your armor anyway. I'm now going to grab out what's in this box right here, and you can see this one had a Book of Piercing, Swift Sneak 2, and the Fire Aspect, and overall just a lot of good stuff. And of course up here we could store that back into our ender chest for safekeeping. And you'll basically just proceed to go through the entire ancient city, grabbing as much treasure as you can, trying to block up those shriekers and have them not see that you are there. Now of course that's fine if you do not alert any shriekers, but it is very likely that you will, and so I will show you what to do if you do have that happen, so that you do not instantly die from the incredibly dangerous Warden. And a Warden just summon in right here, and usually we would be dead, but I'm not worried at all because I have the Elytron here, so you can simply fly away from it. Now basically sort of fly up and try and glide away from its position. Something like this is even fine. As long as you're a little bit over 20 blocks away from it, it won't really try and come and get you. Now it can track the player from a pretty long distance, but once you're about 20 blocks away there's no direct attacks it can do. And actually just flying around the ancient city here, we can fly incredibly close to the Warden and it won't really pick up on where we are. And we can fly throughout all of here and just be completely safe from any Warden that might try and get us. And so generally that's how you escape from a Warden, and because it wasn't really triggered by anything, you can just wait until that despawns 60 seconds later, come back to the area and continue on with raiding it. And really, raiding ancient cities that way, they become much easier, especially since if you don't care about the Warden too much, you can go over to a, let's say, really good area to get loot from, maybe an area with a lot of the shriekers, just of course being careful that the Wardens despawn by then. So for instance, if we go to an area like this, it's very dangerous. We can try and destroy as many of these shriekers as possible before the Warden comes in. Once the Warden does come in, then we can just finish up destroying these. We can fly out of the area before it's too deadly. Even just getting somewhat far away is good enough. Just be aware that the Warden can smell you out if you are too close to it. And if you want to know some more information about how to actually kill the Warden, and some other techniques to avoid them or to trap them when you're in the ancient cities, I have a video all about Wardens, and there's an iCard on the screen right now. If you check that out, that'll definitely help you in raiding the ancient city as well. Also, if you walk on the wool blocks, these sounds of your feet are not picked up by these skulk sensors there, so that's also a good tip to know if you are having issues with that. And these long corridors can be great. Just be aware that the Warden can go through them. If you want to stop the Warden from going through these, go like this. Just be aware some of its attacks, like the sonic charge, can still definitely get you through blocks. Anyway, that is how you raid the ancient city and get tons of loot. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.